Nobody in that timber camp understood they were standing next to the deadliest axeman in the Pacific Northwest. A weathered stranger endured mockery without uttering a word. His silence was sharper than any blade, colder than winter frost, heavier than ancient timber. Around him, chaos and laughter filled the air until his stillness became suffocating, and that weight transformed into a death warrant. The Devil's Timber Camp roared with crude jokes and burning pitch. It was 1878, and the logging territory of Cascade Ridge existed under the brutal rule of one man, Connor McKenna, the ruthless boss of the Redwood Reapers gang. He controlled every tree felled, every wagon loaded, every dollar earned. Where his men walked, violence followed like shadow. But tonight, something disrupted the pattern. At the equipment shed stood a man who seemed out of place. Tobias Crane, 67 years old, white beard like fresh snow, skin scarred from decades under an unforgiving sun. His hands bore calluses from gripping axe handles. Nobody understood what an old-timer wanted in hell like this. Connor McKenna evaluated him with contempt. An old fool, a relic, he thought. He approached slowly while his lumberjacks laughed, knowing what came next. McKenna grabbed thick pine pitch and poured it over the stranger's head. "Welcome to the end, Grandpa," he sneered. "I own every tree, every blade, every breath here." Tobias did not respond, just stared at sawdust beneath his boots, calm as if the insult never occurred. The silence stretched, and then something shifted. There was something unsettling about this man, something contained, like a forest fire waiting to unleash destruction. One lumberjack whispered, "Boss, that old man has a strange look in his eyes." McKenna shoved a timber cart. Tools clattered and fell. Still, the old man did not flinch, only raised his gaze briefly. A calm stare, frozen and empty, a stare that did not belong to any ordinary sawyer. "Before you discover how a 67-year-old man became the nightmare of 19 violent loggers, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me which country you are watching from. United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia? I would love to know where my audience is. Buckle up, partners, because what Tobias Crane is about to unleash is not just revenge. It is a death sentence written in blood and sawdust. Stay close, because the timber yard is about to run red, and the legend of the Axeman will come alive before your eyes. Cascade Ridge was a place civilization avoided. 4 muddy paths, a trading post, a blacksmith shop, and a logging camp that never slept. Law had ventured through years ago, but never lingered. Outlaw territory, and Connor McKenna was its uncrowned emperor. 3 years back, McKenna and his crew burned the ranger station and left the forest warden hanging from the tallest pine. Since then, nobody dared oppose them. They stole timber rights, murdered rival loggers, terrorized families. The territory breathed fear. Tobias Crane arrived on a Wednesday. Freight wagon, no possessions, no visible weapons, just an old canvas sack and a worn hat. He paid for a bunk at Widow Patterson's boarding house with copper coins. He spoke to nobody, asked no questions, simply observed. Curious, the widow inquired where he came from. Tobias answered in a gravelly voice, "From a place that does not exist any more." That first evening, Tobias ate alone in the mess hall, coffee in one hand, dried venison in the other. The men shouted, argued over cards, smashed tin cups. One brute, Cleaver Jack, noticed the old man. "Look here, boys, fresh blood." He stumbled over, drunk, and knocked Tobias's hat off. "Old-timers do not last long here, Grandpa. You came to die." Tobias chewed slowly, eyes steady, replying in an icy tone, "I came to settle accounts." Cleaver Jack laughed. "Settle what?" "Old debts, the kind paid in blood," Tobias said quietly. Silence descended for a heartbeat. Cleaver Jack frowned, confused, then spat tobacco juice into Tobias's coffee and returned to his table amid laughter. The old man wiped the rim with his sleeve, finished his meal, dropped coins on the table, and walked out. Before crossing the threshold, he paused and looked back at the table. His gaze lingered on each face, memorizing them one by one. Outside, under orange glow of lanterns, cold winds swept through the pines. Wooden structures creaked. Shadows stretched across muddy ground. Somewhere in the past, the name Tobias Crane whispered in terror. Something terrible. Something everyone would soon remember. What deadly secret did this old man conceal? Keep watching. Widow Patterson's boarding house smelled like cedar and leather. Tobias climbed the stairs slowly, each step measured, decades of discipline. His room was modest, a cot, a chair, a window overlooking the timber yard. He sat and pulled from his canvas sack the only valuable thing he carried, a yellowed photograph. In it, a young forestry ranger with a badge stood beside a woman holding a girl of about 8. Tobias traced the woman's face with his finger. His eyes moistened, but he did not cry. He had not cried in decades. The last time was 1863, when he found his cabin burned and his son and granddaughter buried under collapsed timber. The culprits were timber barons who cleared land by any means necessary. Tobias tracked them for 4 years, finding them one by one. None died quickly, and when the last man stopped screaming, Tobias vanished. He became a legend, the Axeman, the sawyer who never missed, who killed without hesitation, who left only silence and corpses. For decades he hid in deep forests, living as a recluse, trying to forget the taste of vengeance. Until 5 weeks ago, a dying trapper stumbled to his cabin, begging for help. Before dying, he spoke of Cascade Ridge, of McKenna and his men, and mentioned a name that froze Tobias's blood. Luther Baines, the only man who had escaped his vengeance 17 years ago, the one who orchestrated the attack on his family, the one who ordered his cabin burned while they slept. And now Luther Baines was Connor McKenna's second-in-command. Tobias removed his boots and lay down fully clothed, staring at the photograph. His hands trembled not from fear, but from muscle memory. His fingers remembered the weight of an axe handle, the exact swing arc, the smell of pine sap. Outside, the crude laughter continued, unaware that the axeman had awakened. Cascade Ridge had just sealed its fate. The storm was coming. Do not look away. Morning came with harsh sun, turning the timber yard into shadows. Tobias woke before dawn, as always, stretching with precise movements. Every joint protested but obeyed. He went down to the kitchen where Widow Patterson had prepared coffee. "Morning, Mr. Crane," she whispered. "Never sleep well, ma'am, but survived another night," he replied. She served him black coffee and bread. As he ate, Tobias watched the yard. McKenna's men were already prowling, stealing lumber from independent cutters. One thug beat an elderly hauler who could not pay. The man fell. Nobody intervened. Tobias gripped his cup tightly. The widow noticed the change in his eyes. "Do not get involved, Mr. Crane. Those men kill for sport." "I know," he said. "I used to do the same." The widow paled and said nothing more. Tobias stepped outside. The sun hid his face as he strode toward the yard. The hauler still lay bleeding. The brute who attacked him, a massive man called Ox Riley, laughed with his companions. "Hey, old man, that hauler owes me respect, and you are sticking your nose where it does not belong." Tobias straightened slowly, back cracking. "This man owes you nothing. and I owe you less." Ox Riley laughed and drew a logging knife. "You got any idea who you were talking to?" "Yes," Tobias said serenely. "A dead man walking." Ox Riley frowned, confused, but the older territory people, those who remembered stories, felt a chill. One drunk logger named Pete whispered, trembling, "That is him. That is the Axeman." Ox Riley hesitated. The name meant nothing to him, but the old man's eyes did. They were cold, empty, the eyes of someone who had killed so many times that death became routine. Before Ox Riley could react, Tobias moved. His hand shot forward, grabbed Ox Riley's wrist, twisted with brutal efficiency. The knife fell. Ox Riley screamed. Tobias released him and stepped back. "Tell your boss I am here for Luther Baines. Nobody else has to die." Ox Riley stumbled backward, clutching his broken wrist, and ran toward the main lodge. The other lumberjacks stared in shock. An old man had just disarmed the strongest brute without breaking a sweat. Tobias helped the bleeding hauler to his feet. "Get out of this territory. It is about to become hell." The hauler nodded and fled. Within minutes, the entire camp knew. An old stranger had challenged Connor McKenna. Word spread like wildfire. At the main lodge, McKenna slammed his fist on the table. "Who is this old fool?" Luther Baines, sitting in the corner, went pale. His hands trembled as he poured whiskey. "Connor, we need to leave, now." McKenna looked at him, confused. "Leave? For one old man?" Luther's voice cracked. "That is not just an old man. That is Tobias Crane, the Axeman." The room fell silent. Even McKenna, who feared nothing, felt ice in his veins. The Axeman was a legend whispered around campfires. The man who had dismantled the entire Cascade Timber Syndicate, who killed 40 men over 4 years, who never lost a fight. McKenna swallowed hard. The Axeman is a myth. Ghost stories. "I saw him kill 6 men with 1 axe in under 20 seconds, Luther whispered. "He does not fight. He executes." McKenna stood, trying to regain control. "Then we kill him first. Gather the men, all 19. We end this tonight." Luther shook his head desperately. "You do not understand. He will not stop. He will hunt us one by one." "Then we make sure he dies first," McKenna growled. Outside, Tobias returned to the boarding house. He washed the pitch from his hair, sharpened his tools, and prepared. Tonight, the reckoning would begin. The camp was about to learn why legends never die. "Stay close, because the timber is about to be stained red." Sunset painted the sky blood orange as Tobias sat on the porch. He cleaned an old double-bladed axe, each stroke of the whetstone deliberate and rhythmic. The sound echoed through the camp like a death knell. Connor McKenna gathered his 19 men in the main yard. They carried axes, saws, chains, and knives. Some had old rifles. They formed a semicircle around the boarding house, torches blazing. "Come out, old man," McKenna shouted. "You want Luther? You will have to go through all of us." The door creaked open. Tobias stepped out slowly, axe in one hand, calm expression on his weathered face. He looked at the 19 armed men and showed no fear. "I gave you a chance, McKenna. I said nobody else had to die. You chose this." Luther Baines stood behind McKenna, trembling. "Tobias, please, it was not my idea. I was following orders." Tobias's eyes locked on Luther. "You held the torch. You set my cabin on fire. My son screamed for mercy. My granddaughter cried for help. You gave them flames." Luther fell to his knees. "I did not want to. I was young. I was scared." "But you did," Tobias said quietly. Absolute silence. McKenna raised his hand. "You are outnumbered, old man. 19-1. You cannot win." Tobias tilted his head slightly. "I have faced worse odds and left nobody standing." McKenna laughed nervously. "Then let us see if the legend is real. Men, kill him." The 19 lumberjacks charged, and in the next 9 seconds, history was written. Tobias moved with impossible speed for his age. His axe became a blur. The first man fell before he took 3 steps, axe blade buried in his chest. Tobias pulled it free, spun, and struck the second man across the throat. Blood sprayed. The third man swung a chain. Tobias ducked, grabbed it mid-swing, yanked him forward, and drove the axe handle into his skull. He dropped. Chaos erupted. Men screamed, charged, and died. Tobias moved through them like a ghost. Every swing precise, every step calculated. No wasted motion, pure efficiency. A rifle fired. Tobias twisted. The bullet grazed his shoulder. He hurled the axe. It spun through air and embedded in the rifleman's chest. He fell. Tobias picked up a fallen saw and used it to block an incoming strike, then kicked the attacker in the knee. The man collapsed, screaming. Another swing, another body. 60 seconds later, 12 men lay dead or dying. McKenna retreated toward the lodge, grabbing a torch. "He is a demon!" he screamed. Luther stood frozen, unable to move, unable to fight, just watched as Tobias advanced, relentless, inevitable. The last 4 lumberjacks charged desperately, swinging wildly. Tobias dodged, parried, struck. One by one they fell. McKenna stood alone. Him, Luther, and an old man walking toward them like death itself. Tobias stopped 15 paces from McKenna. 12 dead, 7 wounded, 2 left. Luther, get on your knees." Luther collapsed, sobbing. "Do it, Tobias. End this." But McKenna raised a logging knife, not at Tobias, but at Luther. "If I am dying, I am taking this coward with me." The knife flew. Tobias moved faster. His hand shot out, caught the knife mid-air, and hurled it back. The blade buried itself in McKenna's throat. He gurgled, stumbled, and collapsed. "That was for my family," Tobias said. He walked to Luther and stood over him. "You get to live. Spending every day haunted is better than the coward you were." Without another word, Tobias picked up his axe, walked to a waiting horse, and mounted. He rode toward the sunrise. The Axeman disappeared into legend. Cascade Ridge was finally free. 12 men lay dead. 7 wounded crawled away. 1 broken soul was given a second chance. Sometimes justice does not come from a badge or courthouse. Sometimes it rides in on horseback, carried by a ghost who refused to stay buried. Luther wept, the weight of massacre and mercy pressing down on him. The territory would never forget the day the Axeman returned. Stories of Tobias Crane would be told for generations, a man who could kill with precision, whose vengeance was methodical, and whose mercy chose its moment. Cascade Ridge could breathe again. The sun rose fully, casting long shadows over a territory scarred but alive. And somewhere along the horizon, a lone rider vanished into legend, leaving only silence and sawdust behind. Tobias Crane, the Axeman, had finished what he started 17 years ago, and in doing so he became more than a man. He became a story, a warning, a legend. And that is how it ended, folks. A territory once swallowed by fear now breathes again, free under the same sun that once watched it burn. Tobias Crane, the Axeman, did not just take revenge. He reminded Cascade Ridge that evil never wins forever. Even the darkest night must face the dawn. Some say he vanished beyond the mountains. Others swear they saw his horse at the edge of the forest when the moon was full. Maybe he still rides somewhere carrying ghosts of his past, waiting for the next territory that needs a reckoning. But one thing is certain. Where justice hesitates, legends never rest. And maybe, when the wind blows through the pines at dusk, you can still hear the faint echo of his axe striking timber. Crack, crack, justice whispered by the wind. Now tell me, partner, if you were in Tobias's boots, would you have forgiven Luther or finished him too? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know what you would have done. And if you have made it this far, riding with me through every swing, every silence, and every shadow of this story, thank you. Your support keeps this old storyteller's fire burning bright. Before you ride off, do not forget to hit that like button if this tale made your heart race. Subscribe so you do not miss the next journey into the untamed frontier. And tell me from where in the world you are watching. Until our next story, partner, keep your axe sharp, your spirit strong, and your honor intact. Because out here in the wilderness, sometimes justice wears no badge. Ride safe, and may the legend of the Axeman live forever in your memory.